This video is walking you through how to do your mini lesson for your pre-reading strategy that you have selected. So first of all, you will be choosing a pre-reading strategy based on a particular passage. So the first thing that you need to do is go here and select a pre-reading passage. So this is week 3 on Classroom. You can see there are several here. Skim through a couple and choose one. Doesn't really matter which one you choose, but you will be choosing a pre-reading strategy that makes sense for the passage that you chose. Something to know about these is they're all about 8th grade reading level. So it's not going to be anything too complex for your students, but we're still going to provide that support. This is just for practice, so I didn't want to give you something long and gigantic. But your reading lesson plan, the big TWS formatted one, we will have an at grade level reading passage or short story or something like that. So when you choose these, I don't want any repeats. I want everybody to choose a different passage. So just make sure you come here and sign up. Once you've chosen your passage, put your name and the title of the passage that you chose. And then check this before you pick, because if somebody picked the one you want, just pick a different one. So I want to show you on these. They have a Common Core standard here already. So that is going to be the standard that you choose to put on your lesson plan for this, okay? Now remember, this is not your big lesson plan assignment. This is just a practice assignment. It's going to count as a checkup. So this is just for practice. But when you do your bigger lesson plan, you will choose your own standard based on what you want students to get out of the text, the skill that you want them to be working on. So you can see they're about 1 to 2 pages each. You don't have to use any of this supporting stuff, but you can, okay? So you're going to choose your passage first and sign up for it. And then I do really recommend that you print it out, that you annotate it, that you think about what you would want students to get from it. And then from there, you need to choose a pre-reading strategy. So a strategy to do before they even start to read the thing, before you even hand them the passage. You want to do some sort of pre-reading. Now for week 2, you found pre-reading strategies. You could use one of those, or you could find something else if you feel like that one's not going to work for the passage that you chose, or you want to try or find a different one. What you're going to do then is open up this mini lesson template. This is a really helpful document, and I'll show you that in a second. And then this is the template that you're going to write your mini lesson plan practice on. So you're going to include the title and author of passage. You're going to take the learning objective. It's probably already at the top there, so just stick it there. And we're going to use that same learning objective so that we don't have to think too hard on it, since this is just for practice. And then these are the different pre-reading purposes that you might choose a strategy for. When you choose, you want to think, is this something that students might know something about already, or we've already studied? If so, activating prior knowledge might be a really good way to use a pre-reading strategy. If this is something that students would likely be totally unfamiliar with, maybe I need to build background knowledge. Similarly, if this is something that students there's a lot of big words in it that you know students are going to struggle with, and those words are really important to the meaning, you might want to do vocabulary for your pre-reading. Setting a purpose for reading is always really valuable. Like, as we read this, we're going to look for character development, or this is really going to help us understand more about this thing. So as we read, we're going to look for this, right? So that pre-reading can help us set the purpose. We can make predictions. So you could tell them a little bit about what's going on, and then, use some sort of strategy for making predictions, or generate questions. And really generating questions is sort of also setting a purpose for reading, as is making predictions, because then they're looking for answers, or they're looking to see if their predictions have come true. So one of these will be your key choice, but it may do a couple different things. You want to select a pretty narrow type of strategy that has one key focus. Brief explanation of your choice. So if you said it builds background knowledge, in what way will it do that? Or how will this strategy help you do that? So you're filling out the right-hand column over here, by the way. You want to name your strategy, okay? So maybe you're choosing Think, Pair, Share. You're choosing that strategy, name it. And then when you actually deliver your lesson plan, when you're teaching or when we're practicing, you tell the students what the name of the strategy actually is. So you will tell them, we're going to use a pre-reading strategy called Think, Pair, Share. And by the way, please nobody choose Think, Pair, Share, because we're all pretty familiar with that one already. So I want you to choose something a little different. So I'll use Think, Pair, Share as an example here. So you're going to literally write Think, Pair, Share. And we're going to say this strategy will help us activate background knowledge and think of what we already know about the topic. Let's just say it's bats, okay? So what you're doing here is actually writing a script. When you use a strategy, you will tell students what the strategy is. You will tell them why the strategy is valuable and why you are using it in the classroom. Because we want them to be independent. So eventually they may use this strategy or a version of this strategy before they read a text, before they tackle a text. So you want to make that explicit so that they have access to that strategy. Nothing is secret, right? So a couple sentences here, you're going to go on a little bit longer because that's what you're actually going to say to students. Then you're going to plan to show students how to use the strategy. So you're always going to give instructions or modeling if necessary. So you're going to write a literal script. So the first step of Think, Pair, Share is thinking of what you already know. Please grab a piece of scratch paper and divide it into 3 sections. And then teacher shows example on board. Okay, so I'm going to include what I'm doing, what I'm telling them to do. This is a script, but I'm also going to include sort of, like step by step how I'm going to show them how to use the strategy. Then I'm going to say I'm going to do some modeling. Okay, so we are always going to include modeling or think aloud when we're using these strategies. It's going to help support struggling students. It's going to help support students with IEPs. It's going to help support students who are who do not speak English as their ELL students, right? So it's going to help support a lot of students and also just clarify for students by making that thinking explicit. We don't keep secrets about what good reading looks like. We make it explicit. So I'm going to include some modeling here. I'm going to do a think aloud. What do I know about bats? Oh, I remember once I went to a museum. So these would be literal things I would say to students. And then I'm going to include actions like writes fact about bats on board as example, okay? So yours is going to look a little more organized than this, but this is the type of thing that I want you to have here. A literal step-by-step of what you will do and what you will have students do and what you will say to students. Transition into independent reading. You're going to say something like, as we read this passage, think of what you are learning about bats. Okay, so really, really simple, because in the real world, if we were doing this and continuing, you would have a during reading strategy too, and you would introduce them to that. So we're just going to find a good transition that links what they did here to what they're about to read about. So there's an example for you. You're welcome to pause this if you need to look at this example. I'm going to delete it so that you don't see it, so that you have a blank template when you come into this document. I want to show you this PDF too. It's the same one linked on Classroom. And this document is so incredibly helpful when you're thinking about how to use these strategies well and how to choose them purposefully. So there's a strategic planning checklist here, but what I really like is this graphic organizer. You think about the daily outcome, and that is your standard or your goal, right? Your learning objective, your standard or your goal. And then you can see how the before reading purpose links to that. So if your goal is character analysis, you might choose a before strategy that asks you to think about characters or personalities, right? Something related is going to help unify your lesson. Then during, you're going to have them annotate where they see characters changing, right? So everything should sort of link to that daily outcome. Now this one's just for practice. We're not doing before, during, or after with this mini lesson practice. So that unity isn't as important, but when we get to the big lesson plan that you're going to do, that unity will be key. So I want you to keep this in mind. And then after purpose, you're going to discuss character development, right? Because it's all going to be linked to that standard. That doesn't mean that's the only thing you're going to discuss, but you want that unity running through your lesson plan. Choose something that makes sense for your outcome, and etc. Then I really like this too, teacher talk. The teacher says these things, right? So keep these things in mind. You name the strategy. You tell them how to use the strategy. You show them how to use the strategy. You might give them examples, you might give them adjustments, and then you always justify the usefulness of the strategy. This strategy helps us read better because it helps us visualize. And when we visualize, our brains are better activated to what we're reading. Or this strategy introduces tricky vocabulary. And if we know those words going in, we'll be better able to read and understand the passage. So whatever that is, just a couple sentences explaining to students the value of this strategy. You may also do guided practice. So if it's sort of a tricky strategy, you are going to help walk them through it in a more mind blank, but in a more guided way. There we go. Okay. And then independent practice if necessary, again, depending on the complexity of the strategy. Something like a think, pair, share, you're probably familiar with it. You don't need to do a lot of like modeling and things as much, but we want to get it in there for practice anyway. And then you can see here before literacy strategies, this is a really helpful page here. So consider the purposes, consider the content of the lesson. I love these tips. Is it a new concept? Have they never learned about bats before? If so, building background knowledge would be a good thing to choose a strategy based on. If it's a review or something they're familiar with, or it's a key theme like mental health that a lot of students have been talking about lately, activating knowledge. Or vocabulary, if vocabulary may interfere, or particular parts of the content that need to be emphasized. So we're really thinking about theme, we're really thinking about character. If so, choose a strategy that's going to draw attention to those important concepts. And then also awesome about this is there's a lot of different examples as well. Anticipation guide's a really good one. 5-word prediction's a really good one. So if you want a new strategy, one that you haven't focused on yet for this unit, you can scroll through here and see there's some really, really good ones in here. If you continue to scroll through this document, you'll see there's tips on choosing during literacy strategies, after literacy strategies. This document is really so helpful, and we're going to come back to it when we do our big lesson plan as well. So filling this in is your sort of assignment for this week, and then we're going to practice it. So you're going to actually report to us via video and say these things that you have in the script. So you're going to turn in a draft first. I'll give you any feedback, and then we'll do the actual practice of you delivering that lesson plan. So let me know if you have any questions, and I'll be checking those emails to see what I can do to help. Bye.